I'm going to give you a sense of how this problem could have been broken down into little chunks and tested one bit at a time. Okay? So what's the, we have basically two classes to write, and then everything else is just kind of a test. So in the previous assignment, we developed the movie class, and hopefully with the feedback that was given, that was kind of fixed up a little bit. But even if it wasn't 100% to my satisfaction in the last assignment, it could still work here up to a certain point. One of the reasons why the comparator in the movie class had to have both the title and the year was that, as you can see, I mean, one of the things that we want to sort of look at are situations in which more than one movie have the same name, the same title, and to my knowledge, there haven't been two movies of the same name in the same year. So here's the Thomas the Crown Affair. The original was pretty cool. I thought the remake was even better, but that's just an opinion. But they're both worth seeing, just if you don't. The Thomas Crown Affair? Yeah, the Pierce Brosnan one I thought was better. The original was with Steve McQueen and Faye Dunaway, who was really kind of cool. And then in the remake was kind of, well, getting here. And then A Star Is Born has been, there were at least 4 that I found. There may even be more. But so as you can see, if you had only compared on the title, you wouldn't have been able to get these duplicates. Okay, but that's peeking ahead. Let's kind of come back here. We have 2 classes, and the first one, I mean, I said it should be self-explanatory. I thought it was. We have 4 instance variables. We have a set and 3 maps. One is called All Movies. The other is called All Movies by Title. One All Movies by Year and All Movies by Genre. So my hope was you look at that and just say that the string in the key for this map was the title, and the set were all the movies of that title. And likewise, the integer here was the year, and the set was all the movies that were in that year. And likewise, the genre. Remember, we had like a number of different genres, and a movie could have one or more typically. And so the key would be the genre, and then the set would be all the movies that had that genre. And since a movie could have more than one, the idea would be that a movie could, in theory, be on more than one of these. And if you remember in the previous assignment, we had things like this. We had these maps, but they were in the main method. And the thing to understand about the main method is not where you need to put really important functionality. It's a place where you can put stuff to test things out, but then in the end, for the final product, it shouldn't be in main. It should be in a class like this. Now, nevertheless, the UML says very clearly that there are these 4 instance variables. And then you have, now the getters, I thought, well, you have one to get all the movies. That's a standard getter. The other getters had an argument, and I thought it would be clear that the argument would be the key of this. So if I say get all the movies by year, and if you give it an integer that's the year, it would return all the movies in that year by looking it up in this map. That was the idea. So maybe that should have been spelled out a little more. The key method here was the add movie. So how do you add a movie? The idea was that you add them one at a time, and if you hand me a movie, I'm gonna put it in the right place. Okay, so how do you get started with something like that? I'm gonna put this in, oops. I'm going to put this in a separate package, and then after class I will push all this so you'll have access to it. And then also there'll be the video. All right, so let's start with a Java class called the movie holder. Okay, so now, again, so what I'm going to illustrate, hopefully, is how this can be created one step at a time, making sure that you're testing each element. So now what constitutes a step varies depending on how experienced one gets. The smallest step is one instance variable at a time, and maybe any methods which involve that instance variable, again, ideally one at a time, or at least what is the minimum implemented code here that will match what the design specifies that I can test. So instead of just writing all this down, I'm going to do it one instance variable at a time, and then make sure that I've gotten that one right. And I'm not going to write another line of code until I make sure I get that right. Okay, so all movies, let's just go in order. So set all movies. Oops. Okay, now, since this is a container, a collection, and it's an instance variable, then it has to be instantiated somewhere. That is, every instance variable, in fact, every variable that's an object reference has to be instantiated somewhere. The convention that I like to insist on is to instantiate it in the constructor. And if we look what kind of constructor, our constructor is going to be the empty constructor, so that's relatively good news. Meaning that and since we want to kind of sort these, now this could be a tree map, not a tree map, a tree set. Getting ahead of myself here. So it can be a tree set or a hash set. Again, the assignment didn't specify, so tree set, hash set, both are equally okay here. Okay, so what methods involve this instance variable? Well, first is the getter, get all movies. And then the second is add. Those are the only two. So the first is a straightforward getter. And the thing about getters is, thanks to the little refactor business we have, now we don't want a setter. We don't want to set this. In fact, one of the things that NetBeans is even suggesting is to make it final, and that's fine. So that when we refactor it to add the getter, let's add the last method getter. And then because it's a collection, we want to preserve encapsulation. So we want to return a copy. And believe it or not, this is enough to start testing, because all kinds of things can go wrong, even at this stage, even with this little code. So that's why I'm a real baby about it. So I'm going to just add a separate method. I'm going to call it test movie holder, because I just want to make sure that I haven't made a terrible mistake with anything. Okay? So Now, what can I do with this movie holder? Not a whole lot. But I do have this one getter method. And even though I don't have any movies in there, it should be able to at least give me an empty set. And if it can't do that, then something is off. So let's get all movies and see what happens there. Now in this case, it should give me the empty set as it does. What could go wrong? Well, if I forget to instantiate it, then I'm going to get a null pointer exception. Oh, because it was final, it wasn't. Okay, so I got a null pointer exception. All right, so how do I deal with that? Well, I find the link where it choked. It choked on this getter. And that means that one object on this line is null. And if I don't trust that, then I can simply debug it. So I put a breakpoint, just to confirm which thing is null. Debug, and I hover, and all movies is null. Why is it null? Because I didn't instantiate it. Okay? So the point is that even with just this little code, there's stuff that can go wrong. And so now, let's make sure that it's working. Okay, so I got nothing, all right? But I at least got nothing and not a null pointer exception. If I get an exception by running it, then I stop and make sure I get it fixed. Okay, so now, how can I put stuff in there? Well, let's look at what other method would involve this, and that would be the add movie event. If I want to add a movie, what can I do with what I have right here? Well, let's write the add movie event. And okay, so now what, if all I have is the set of all movies, what can I do? I can add it to all the movies. Now, I just added one line of code, or added a method, and one line of code, and I'm not going to go on until I make sure that that works. So how can I make sure it works? Well, any ideas? Okay, I added a method that says add movie. Okay, the line looks perfectly fine, but I don't want to write any more code until I make sure that what I've written has worked. So what would you do to make sure that this is actually working?
Make a movie and add it and see if it outputs it.
Exactly. Make a movie, add it, and see if it came back. So can we make a movie? Well, of course. I mean, there's no, even though okay, so we have what do we need for a movie? We need a title, running time, a year, and an array of strings for the genre. Running time. What year? Okay, so we make one movie and we add it. And now I need that to show up. And there it is. Okay, so so what I've done, and if I'm now, I mean, and at this point I might even make a local commit, just to make sure that I have like a little stake in the ground. Okay, so I have implemented this instance variable, the constructor, the getter, and some of the add movie method. Okay, so let's pick another one. All right, what's the next? All movies by title. What is that? A map, string, set, movie, etc. So let's add that to the mix. Okay, and then we need the map, and again, we need to instantiate it. Again, it could be a tree map or a hash map. Either, you know, they weren't particularly specified. If you make them tree maps and tree sets, they'll be sorted as you kind of do it, and it'll sort of save some sorting later. All right. So what, we can make this final. We can make you final. Oops, what happened? Unused, okay. Well, it's, now one of the things we can do is we can, well, actually we don't want to encapsulate the field here because the getter method for this okay, the getter method, okay, what happened? Okay. Okay, so remember, encapsulation says I don't want to return the actual thing. I want to make a copy of it. And then here's the thing is that if I ask for the wrong title, then I shouldn't have anything. So here's where it just needs to be a little bit, it's a little bit tricky. So what if I ask for a title that isn't in the map? Well, again, we can ask if it contains the key of the title, then I can add all of the title.
I have a question in regards to the encapsulation. Is that why you're making a new instance of the tree set all movies and get all movies?
Yes.
Okay, that was throwing me off.
Yeah. See, here's
the clone. Why would you do that? It didn't make
Yeah.
that connection there.
Yeah, the unfortunately the clone it won't work because the clone will still contain the actual set that's inside the map, and once anybody gets their hands on that and they start taking stuff out or putting stuff in, then it's going to affect your thing. So you don't want to do that. Okay, so this is the pattern that you can use for all of them. So I mean, I'm not going to do all of the others, but hopefully this will. Now the other thing that needs to be done is on the add side. So when we add a movie, we need to add it to the right title thing. So we can do it in a couple steps. Let's just, I mean, it never hurts. Oops, no, I'm sorry, not there. Sorry, I put this in the wrong place. That should have been in the constructor. And actually, in fact, what I should do now is I should test this. Okay, now here's the thing. Since I haven't added anything, all right, so let's see if I can get the title, the thing that I actually asked for. And I get nothing, but that's what I was expecting because I haven't added it. Okay, if I was expecting to see it here, then I'd have to go back and say, okay, why wasn't it there? Because I haven't added it. So where do I have an opportunity to add a new movie into these things? It's the add movie event. And so now here's the issue. With an empty map where the values are a set like this, I don't know what titles I'm going to have in this particular case. So when I encounter a new title, the pattern that we've seen before, again, is I want to ask if the all movies by title, if it contains the key of the title, actually, if it doesn't contain the key of the title, what happened? Oh, if it doesn't contain the key of the title, then I need to add, to put the set in. Because otherwise, it's going to, at the next line, it's going to be another null pointer exception. So, but now I can get the title and then add the movie. Okay, so you see, so this is a pattern that we hopefully used in the last assignment, where if I'm adding things to a map, then, and I can't, and the thing that I'm adding it to, the values are a container, in this case a set, then I don't know whether or not this title has been encountered before. And if it hasn't, then I need to instantiate that before I add it. And now, having done this, this is now always going to work. Because if this is false, that is, if all movies by title does contain the key title, then when I get it, I can add it. And if, well, okay, so now I can test it, and now I get both of them. And then just as an additional test, what if I ask for something, oops, that isn't there? Okay, so I might get a null pointer exception, or I might just get the empty one. I want the empty one. So if I ask for a title that's not there, then I get the empty one. Okay, so, and basically, that's exactly the pattern that you need to implement all of these. And the only tricky one is with the genre, I have to kind of get the string array, loop over the string array, and do it for each one of those. But again, we've kind of done that in the previous assignment. Okay, so that's how, in hopefully a relatively short amount of time, I've gotten some code that I've tested and actually kind of works. Okay, so now once I have all that done and tested, then and only then do I move on to this, because the issues involved with the movie builder are a little bit different. But kind of the key here is that the movie builder has a reference to the movie holder, so all of the activity, all of the infrastructure, if you will, of storing and sorting the movies is being delegated to the movie holder. So the movie builder is responsible for actually building the movies. The additional little wrinkle I threw in was to run it in a separate thread, and a big part of the reason for that is because in this case it's reaching out over the network to grab the data. And whenever you're doing that, just due to things happening on the network and whatever, you generally want to do that in a different thread, and that's what this callable thing is. I mean, I could have made it a runnable instead of a callable, but I thought I would torture you.
You said the runnable is not really useful.
The-
In class you mentioned that not really being
Yeah,
practical.
yeah. Okay, but here, okay, right. So here's the thing: is that the thing with runnable is the callable and other stuff that involves using executors and stuff like that. So let's see how that can be built up bit by bit. So the first thing is that the first challenge is that because we're running it in a separate thread, I want to make sure that that piece with the executors is actually working. So I don't need to build movies and other kind of stuff to make sure that this thing is working. Why? Because call returns an integer, I can just simply have it return an arbitrary integer to make sure that the threading piece is working, because there are some issues to be dealt with there. So let's look at how that would play out. So okay, so now we want to implement callable with an integer, and we need to get the import and then implement all abstract methods. Okay, so here's the thing: the first thing I want to do now is test this out, and I need to test it out using the executor infrastructure. So how can I test this out to make sure this is actually working? Well, what I can do is I can just return an arbitrary number. Instead of sort of, as you may, it takes a little less than a minute to kind of read the entire gzip file on the network, but that's too long. I want to know a little bit more quickly. And then since at this place, I'm going to build up the main class, so you might as well have it in what's going to be the final one. Okay, so again, with just the code that I've written here, I can actually run this. But now running it means doing this executor business. And then, so here's, remember we got this for, it doesn't matter which one you get. A single thread is just as good as any. And the way we work this is we submit it, and then there's kind of we need an import for it, and then we will need to, and actually, one of the things that they do to quote, help you, which is a little questionable, is that they actually tend to kind of absorb all of the exceptions, so that makes it a little bit tricky. Now, since we're all done, this is where we need to do the shutdown. And then, I'm not sure if it should run. Okay, well, it actually will run, but let's. Yeah, here's where they put the exception. So now I need to, generally speaking, it's not the best idea to just throw exceptions willy-nilly, even though that's an option. I mean, I won't ding you if you do that, but generally it's better to catch the exceptions. Just that's the general principle. The main method is still a bit of a throwaway, so it's a little bit less important there. So what I'm looking for, my method it's going to return 42. And I get 42, which means that I've done the circle on this. So which means it also means I don't, in this particular case, I don't need that await termination thing. But if you want to be there's no harm in awaiting the termination, even for a day. Oops. It wants an interrupted exception, so let's put it inside here. Okay, so await termination is when I have more than one thread going at once, and that waits for all of them. You need to have the shutdown. If you have the await termination, you need to have the shutdown because, in fact, in general, you need to have the shutdown. That tells, if you don't have the shutdown, it'll keep running. And as I said in class, shutdown is one of the worst named methods there because it doesn't shut anything down. What it shuts down is the executor accepting new threads or new callables. That's what it shuts down. So it would have been better named, but just knowing that you got to do that. Okay, so what does this prove? This proves that this is working. If you don't have that verified, then what can happen is you run it and then you sort of sit there looking at a blinking cursor, not knowing if it's running or doing anything. Okay, so the antidote to that is to put something in that's going to be really fast, not do a whole lot, and not have a lot to debug. I mean, there's not a whole lot to debug here, right? Now, it's not doing what I want. All right?
How does it go into that call method automatically?
That's how the callable in the future works. That is, the future, when the future, you get the future from the executor. This will return when the callable has finished executing. And the future get method calls the call method to return what it does.
I don't understand what the value of the exceptions thing, like, what does that tell you?
Well, whenever the interrupted exception is if you're running a thread, there may be an opportunity either programmatically or by user input to interrupt it. In other words, it's like, let's say, if you go and you have a long download and it's taking a long time and you say, okay, forget it, and you cancel that. That would be an interruption of the thread. When that happens, if you were to do that here, you would get an interruption exception. The execution exception is because all kinds of things can be going on inside this call method, if there's an exception that happens there that doesn't have to do with being interrupted, but like a null pointer exception or an array out of bounds exception, then that will get thrown here and caught here.
And those are just so important that the class forces you to incorporate them? Or-
Yeah. Yeah, there are two kinds of exceptions. I mean, we haven't gone too much into that. There are two kinds of exceptions. There are runtime exceptions which don't have to be caught. Notice you never have caught a null pointer exception, but you still get them. And then these are called checked exceptions, meaning you have to explicitly handle them. You have to explicitly catch them or throw them. That's the way it was designed. Okay, so now, okay, so what can we do now to incrementally implement this? Okay, so we've gotten the call method. It's not fully implemented. Why do they have their? Okay, so we have the call method. What are some of the other things? Well, we have the movie holder and the URL and the other stuff, but let's do them just the movie holder. Where the heck did you go? All right, so we have a movie holder. Instance variable. Again, as an instance variable, we want to instantiate it in the constructor. Again, and since I'm not doing the URL yet, I'm just going to have an empty constructor for now. Okay, so now how can I test that my call method is kind of doing some of the things that I want? Well, one of the things I can do is I can sort of take a page out of what I've done before here and just sort of, again, just as a test harness, as it were, create a movie. And let's just be lazy and copy and paste. So, okay, so here's a movie that was sort of working. And then let's add it to movie holder. And now, instead of returning just a fixed number, I can return the size of all my movies. So how many movies have I added? Well, since I'm adding them to movie holder, and movie holder has this map, this set that has all the movies, then the size of that are the number of movies that I've added. And so now when I run, I want to get 1. And I could add another one. What's? Okay, so now I want to get 2. And now what about, let's see, I did not do the getter, so let's encapsulate this last method. Now in this case, it's actually okay to just, I don't need to return a copy or anything, because this is just a reference to the movie holder. It's not a container. They can add a movie if they want, but that's not gonna hurt anything. And so now I can Okay, so movie builder, I can get the movie holder and then get all the movies. And now okay, so now, again, I've verified that both movies that I created got in there, and now I'm going to say exactly what are they. Okay, so I get the two of them. And then, just to test the other one, I can do pretty much the same thing. I can have my movie holder, my movie builder, I get the movie holder, get all movies by title, drama, dramedy. It's kind of like a drama. And I didn't get anything. Why didn't I get anything? Oh, movies by title. I got it by title, so let's see if we can get all those. Okay, so they're the ones that. Why didn't the genre work? Because it's not been implemented. So when you implement that, that's what goes on there. So at this point now, I've verified that the movie builder call method can add movies to the movie holder. So now I need to, now comes the a bit of a tricky part. So I need to now do this URL thing. And now it's complaining about how I've instantiated it. Okay, so now what can I do there? Now before going out to the web, what I can do is I can use that file that we've had. If you remember, it was an input tsv gzip. And okay, now we need to be just a little bit careful. Now it complains it may not be initialized. Okay, so now let's just make sure that we've kind of gotten this. So let's debug it up to here and make sure that the URL actually came in. And so we see that the URL did come in. All right, so now at this point, we can replace all of this. And if you don't want to replace it, we can just comment it out if we ever need to go back to it. Actually, at this point, I'd be committing. But now, we take the code that we had previously done and open up a stream. It's the imports, and then, okay, so now, oh yeah, we need the gzip. We need to gzip it. Okay, and then our scanner, we need to add the import for it, and okay, we got that. So now we can, now this is all things that we've done several times. And and if you remember, okay, what are we trying to do here? Actually, remember in this particular, no, not that one, we have, the first line was that header file. In fact, that's always useful to kind of look at. And actually, if we want, we can just sort of print that out. Just to kind of see what that looks like. And then, okay, now we haven't even done anything yet, but let's make sure that we close our scanner and that we close our gzip input stream and we close our input stream. Notice we close them in reverse order. Okay, so now so now at this point, I just want to make sure that I'm actually kind of reading the thing, and now print lines are generally not recommended, so instead I will simply use the debugger to find my line here and then take a look at what it produced. So we see that we have that's their magic key. The title type, that's where we want to kind of only look at movies. Primary title, that's what we want. Original title is adult, that's where we want to eventually filter it on, that's going to be 0 or 1, and we want to ignore the ones. The start year is the year we're going to get, and then the runtime in minutes we want, and then the genres. Basically what we did in the last one. So what this shows is that we are at least reading the local one, and I'm using the local one because, okay, and now we're not going to get any of the of these, but I see nobody's itching to leave, so I can keep going if you want. Is that, no? Okay, so here's where things can get a little bit tricky. So we want to skip the header. And again, we split this based on the tab. Now here's where we're dealing with the, well, okay, I'll do this first, and then we'll see what happens with that. So the let me do that again. Okay, so should make a note of this somewhere. Okay, so what I want is the 012 is going to be the title. 1, 2, 3, 4 is going to be adult. We'll come back to that. 5 is going to be the year. 5, 6, 7 is going to be the runtime. And then 8 is going to be the genres. All right, so just to kind of keep it. Oops. All right, so now just to kind of make use. I want the title. I want, now the runtime is sort of the next one. So that was at 7. The year was 5. And the, okay, now the genres was 8, and I'm going to split it with, something like that is, I think, what I used, which that's, oops. Okay, I'm re-splitting. So now, okay, and I didn't get any, so what the heck happened? Oh. You see why I didn't get any? Okay, what was I doing at the end? I was getting the movie holder, getting all the movies, and returning the size. So why did it return 0? Said there were no movies in the movie holder. Why are there no movies in the movie holder? Because I didn't put any in there. So I created the movie, but I didn't put it anywhere. I have to say add movie. Now, when I run it, okay, why am I printing all these? I am printing these because I said to print all the movies. And how many Java Rocks movies did I have? None. Well, that's okay. That's okay. So here's where I was printing all of them. And for the local one, it got this many. Now, so now at this point, you know, the movie builder is working. The movie holder is working a little bit, but I haven't tried to connect it to the internet one. Okay, so what needs to happen is, instead of doing the file, this file like this, let's change it to this one. And rather than try to type it all in, I'm just going to copy it and paste it in. Oops. Okay. And now, kind of knowing what I know about this data set, now we're going to get some exceptions which have to be dealt with. Okay, so now notice that we actually got some, but we got number format exceptions for input string \n.
That's what I was running into.
And where did that come from? It's in Movie Builder here. And right there, when we tried to get the runtime, there were some that said, oh, we don't have a runtime for that. So how do you handle that? You handle that by saying, if it equals \n, then let's continue. That's one way of, because so if we encounter one of these, and this may not be the only one, because I think, no wait, was it runtime? No, it was runtime. Yeah. So before I try to parse it, I make sure it's not one of these bad ones. And then I got another one. Where did that one come from? Where's your? In 40. So again, had the same deal with the year. If
So it was mad as both year and runtime. No, I did not know.
yeah, so
I was running into this problem. I recognized the runtime, but I didn't catch the year.
yeah. So now we're not getting an error. It takes a little, about 40 some seconds, depending on the network, to kind of go through all this. Now, I mean, obviously there are some other things to be done. For example, okay, so there we are. And this has all of them, even the adult ones. So if I want to skip the adult one, then I want to do something like if stop that. And then pardon me?
We also have to skip everything that's not in movie, because we did the database and it's got.
Right, yeah.
a lot of stuff that's not.
Yeah, exactly. So, how was that? Well, again, in one, yeah, so, right. So, if that doesn't equal a movie, then we can also continue. And just to be careful, we might want to do equals ignore case, just to maybe on the others as well. And again, it takes a little while to kind of get through, but pardon me? In this case, no, because yeah, it's basically sort of one file, and then if you have multiple threads trying to read the same file at the same time, they're just going to collide with each other. So so the thing is that this is, you know, now there are still a few more details to implement. So I mean, movie builders, it's not counting the adult ones, which you could do that here. So there's that, but and most of the time is actually spent here, believe it or not, in printing the things out. So rather than printing them all out, instead of, let's just and then okay, so we don't, let's see, there were some what was I asking for? Shouldn't take quite so long. Oops. Was I? So I had an extra colon in there. Okay, but the what I want you to take away from this is not so much the specifics of this particular thing, although they can be useful as well. Why are we, well, I didn't want to print them all. There are a lot of data sets that are, you know, that are basically text files. A lot of them are CSV files. I know that a lot of the, they're either gzipped, some of them use zip. The zip is a little bit more complicated to deal with, but it can be basically dealt with. But as we can see, okay, it took about 19 seconds, which isn't too bad. And we got like 366,141 movies altogether, and it was at least able to pick out the ones that matched the title. Okay, so that verifies, so we've kind of verified with the full Monty that the titles, movies by title, all the movies, and the movie builder, as far as it goes, is at least adding them. The big takeaway, though, is to take it one step at a time, and when, you know, write a little bit of code and test. Write a little bit of code and test. And don't move on until you get that working. Because when you do that, then you know that what you just did is what caused the problem. If you try to do more, if I would have tried to write even what I have right here, right from scratch, guaranteed it wouldn't work. I mean, there were a couple times when I deliberately knew I was going to get an exception. There were a couple times when I just made a mistake. For example, like here, I forgot to add the movies to the movie holder. If I hadn't tested for that right away, that would have driven me nuts, because I'm creating movies, and where the hell are they? You know, when I didn't have this, you know, it would be kind of running and running and running. It wouldn't find these guys. It would say I have 0 movies, and I have no idea why. So by not adding them now, I can't find them. No movies, no Star is Born. Why? Just one line I forgot. And that was a genuine mistake, by the way. That was not part of the show. Okay? But what I have now is I have something which is within striking distance of what the final product is supposed to do. That is, I have, you know, now I need to go back. Basically, I need to go back, implement all these in Movie Holder that I haven't done, and then you know, basically sort of count the number of adult movies, and then add a few getters and stuff. And again, I mean, I can't emphasize this too much. Write a little bit of code and test the code before you move on. And just, even if it's just like one line or one method, and even within the method, notice what I did, again, what I did when I first implemented call. Because when you're dealing with something like call, I had to set up executors and do all that other stuff, which was a little bit more code than I like to do. So instead of trying to do all of this, I just returned a number. And that way I could test to make sure that the executors are working. Once the executors are doing the call and the future is getting it and everything, then I can go ahead and implement the real things. And even at that, if you remember, before dealing with the URL and the other stuff, I said, well, let's just hand jam some movies in the way I was doing before and make sure that they get in. Because if they didn't get in, there's no hope for this stuff working. And then once I finally get this stuff working, then I encounter all these null pointer exceptions that were, you know, that I think you all probably encountered. But the thing is, you know how to deal with it, right? I mean, you didn't have any trouble dealing with it, did you? Maybe. How do you deal with something like that? Well, in this case, it's dealing with bad data. And when you deal with data, there's always going to be bad data. Always, without exception. So you need to be as immune to bad data as possible.